All right, here we go. Let's talk a little bit about our stool project. While you're sitting in your seat today, you should be looking at your pieces, and you should see 15.5s, 9s, and 11s. We've talked about these almost every single day. So 15.5s, right? 9s, and then your 11s. And so you should have those all kind of in front of you. The next thing we talked to you about is having myself help you cut this 31.5 degree angle. And once that's done, then our next thing to do is to sand the saw kerf on the edge. That's the edges here. And a lot of you have already started that. So that's at some point you'll need to do that. The next thing we have to talk about is the holes, and that's where we are today. What we want is we want to make sure the holes are in the correct location. So first off, we need to understand a couple things. So we need, in the 15.5s, we need 2 holes. In the 9s, we need 1. And the 11s, we need 0. Okay? So on your 11s, I actually want you to write no hole. Okay? So we don't drill holes in it by accident. And this happens almost every time in our class. So make sure we don't put any holes in the 11s. So let's talk about the holes in the 9s and in the 15.5s. In the 9s, right, what we want is we want only 1 hole, all right? We want 1 hole 3/4 of an inch up in the center, all right? In order to do that, it's really actually pretty simple. One thing I'm going to talk to you about really quick is to have you understand, a lot of you already know this, but if we take this piece and we would measure it this way, all of these pieces, if you remember right, are 3/4 of an inch. So we're going to do that to help us as we put this thing together, and I'll explain to you. So on all of your 9s, we're going to put 1 hole on one side. So what we're going to do then is we're going to take our piece, if you can kind of understand this, we're going to take it and set it up like this, lay this piece flat, any of your pieces that you have, it doesn't matter which one you use, they're all the same thickness. So we're going to set them up like this, all right, and lay them flat on the table. We're going to take our pencil, we're going to make a line across just like that. When we do that, we've measured 3/4 of an inch. So without even measuring or using a measuring tape, we've already have our mark exactly 3/4 of an inch up, which is exactly what we want, all right? It's really good to use a sharp pencil because we want to get that line right in that crease, exactly 3/4 of an inch up. Now, we have to find the center. The center of this is, if we measure this whole thing, it's 1.5 inches. So for those of you that are really good at math, will know that 1/2 inches is 3/4. So we could take our measuring tape and we could go ahead and we could measure over 3/4. All right, we could do that. And that would be fine to do. Or what we can do is, again, use our piece of wood and this time lay it flat on its back again, turn these pieces sideways, use our sharp pencil, and right in the crease, if you look, that's exactly where that mark was at. We've marked it at 3/4. And now we need to go ahead and we need to make sure that our hole is going to go right there in the center. So our hole is going to be just like that. Wherever there's a hole, we also need a round over. So in the this pattern box that it will have out today, we will have a round over. And so when we do the round over, we don't want it down like this. We don't want it up like this. We want it right to the very top. We'll use the term flush. So we want it flush with the top, all right? And then we take our pencil and then we go ahead and we trace on what I call the ears, all right, like this. And then this is what we're going to use and sand these off with the disc sander, all right? So we're going to do that on all 4 of our 9s, all right? We're going to do this exact same thing. What we don't want is we don't want something like this where if you look, I don't know if you can tell or not, this is off to one side. And it's not because they laid it out wrong, right? Because they laid it out right in the center. They actually were just lazy when they drilled it and drilled it off. And now it doesn't look nice. And then they did a pretty poor job either tracing it or sanding it, and now it's not only crooked, but it's also pretty rough on the top. So we want to do a better job at both of those things. And if you look at this one, this also has a hole in the 9, which in the center, which we don't have either. So this one's screwed up all over. That's probably why I took it out of the scrap bin from last marking period. All right. Now let's go back to our 15.5s. We've already cut the angle on them, so we're good there. We've got them sanded. Let's pretend we have them sanded. And now we need to have, if you go back to this, we need to have 2 holes in this 15.5. And if you remember, the 15.5 inch pieces have 2 holes, one at 7 inches from the end here, and the other one 3/4 of an inch down here on the end. So in order to run out the 3/4 one, we can do the same thing. We can take our piece of wood, we'll lay it up like this, lay one of our pieces like this flat on its back, take our sharp pencil and strike a line just like that. And we want to measure it up 3/4 of an inch. So if we measure it, it's correct, we're happy with that. We're up 3/4. Now to find the center, I could measure it and find the center, or I can take it up like this on its side, lay my pieces on its back like I did before, use my sharp pencil, and I can mark my center. And I'm gonna, again, put a hole right there, exactly where it needs to go. Now, this other piece is 7.5 inches up from the bottom. Now, where do you measure 7.5? Do you measure 7.5 from here? Do you measure 7.5 from here? Is it here? Because you're gonna hit different pieces all along the way, right? So what I've done is I've made patterns that say 7.5 inches and it says save on them. We don't want to lose these. So we'll use that term flush again. We're going to put this flush with the end. So my finger can't really even feel the difference between the 2 pieces. Use my sharp pencil and strike a line just like that. I now have 7.5 inches up, okay, just like I wanted. And now I have to find the center. Again, I can measure it, or I can take my pieces like this, lay them sideways, and just like that, mark my 7.5 inch pieces. And I'm gonna have a hole there. What we want is something that looks about like this. 7.5 inches up, and then 3/4 of an inch down. If you noticed, anywhere that we have a hole, we also have a round over. So we go back to the pattern box, find the round over, it says save on it. Again, the term that we use is flush. At the end, trace the ears on, and we sand there and there using the disc sander, which we'll talk about also. So when I get done, right, I should have my pieces all lined up, and I should have, these are really bad examples because if you look, this one is, they didn't clamp it down right, and it's also too close to the top, right? This one's off like we showed you earlier. So we should do a better job. They should look more along the lines like this than these other 2. But when we get all done, we should be able to have a straight line going across here and hole, 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 and then in the end, we should have hole, hole, hole. If we lay them up like this and lay them all down, we should be able to look through all of them all the way through. And now, once you use the drill press, the more important thing with the drill press is making sure that those holes go, right? We're using that Forstner bit, that those holes go right where those 2 lines cross. We can't be close because if we have it just close, we're gonna end up with something that looks like this. Now your stool will still work, but it's not gonna look nearly as nice if it's done correctly and it's done precisely. So today, what we'll do is talk about this and making these and laying these all out, because this is kind of where I think most of you are at. And so hopefully that will help you out laying out those pieces. So 2 holes on the 15.5s and a round over, and 1 hole in the 9 like this, and a round over as well. So this is what we're shooting for now. Today's video is brought to you by Lowe's and Irwin Tools. If you're looking for a decent tool Go to Lowe's, find Irwin. Irwin is Lowe's home brand. And so today's video is sponsored by Irwin Tools from Lowe's.